Well, let's return here. The annual Garma Festival kicks off in northeast Arnhem Land tomorrow. Matt Cunningham joins me live now from the Gove Peninsula. Matt, this is the biggest Indigenous cultural and leadership event on the annual calendar. Who's going to be there this year and what's the focus going to be?
Well, it's going to be very interesting, David. It's not only the Cultural and Leadership Festival, as you say, but it really is the biggest political event on the Indigenous calendar. And I think that a couple of those key political issues in Indigenous affairs are going to be front and centre at this year's Garma Festival. Most notably, of course, is constitutional recognition and the push for an Indigenous voice to Parliament. Now, we'll hear from some of the main players over the next couple of days. Saturday is going to be where most of the action happens. We're going to hear from Noel Pearson on Saturday, speaking at the main forum here at the Garma Festival, but we'll also hear from Galarrwuy Yunupingu, of course, the Gumatj leader, former Australian of the Year, the head of the Gumatj clan, who owns this land here in northeast Arnhem Land. And really, all eyes will be focused on what Galarrwuy Yunupingu has to say. He still holds a lot of power in Indigenous politics in this country. We saw what he had to say at the Barunga Festival last year when he really shot down the Northern Territory's push for treaty, saying that his people didn't even have any idea what they were talking about when they were talking about a treaty. So I think all eyes are going to be on Galarrwuy Yunupingu when he addresses the crowd here at Garma on Saturday. We'll also hear on Saturday from his brother Jawa Yunupingu and from Denise Bowden, the head of the Yothu Yindi Foundation. But that issue of constitutional recognition and the Indigenous voice to Parliament, I'm sure, will be one of the main talking points here over the next 3 days.
Yeah, look, Matt, you're right. Galarrwuy Yunupingu does carry enormous influence, enormous weight in Indigenous politics, and he does not speak very often, very lightly. I remember being there at Garma a couple of years ago when Malcolm Turnbull was there, and at that point Malcolm Turnbull hadn't completely ruled out the idea of what had come through the Uluru Statement. Galarrwuy used his speech there at Garma to urge other Indigenous leaders to give Malcolm Turnbull time. I think ultimately they were all disappointed that Turnbull didn't deliver for them. So it'll be fascinating to see where he goes, as you say, after a pretty fired-up performance at Barunga last year. What's he going to do there at Garma? But from Australia, from the two major parties, who's going to be there? I know Pat Dodson told me the other day he'll be there. Linda Burney, I assume, as well. Ken Wyatt, the Indigenous Affairs Minister, will he be there?
He will be, David. The Labor Party is going to have an incredibly strong contingent here. In fact, 7 federal Labor MPs, I'm told, will be here at the Garma Festival, including Pat Dodson, as you say, Linda Burney, Malarndirri McCarthy, Warren Snowden and Luke Gosling, plus a couple of others. On the other side of the fence, yes, Ken Wyatt, the Minister for Indigenous Australians, will be here, as will Julian Leeser, who, of course, was the co-chair of that parliamentary inquiry into constitutional recognition. So it will be interesting to hear from both Ken Wyatt and Julian Leeser over the next couple of days. Of course, Ken Wyatt made that speech at the Press Club last month where he threw his support behind constitutional recognition and behind a voice to Parliament, only to really be shot down by the Prime Minister a day or two later. You're talking about Galarrwuy Yunupingu and the speech he made here a couple of years ago. I would expect, just talking to people close to Galarrwuy Yunupingu in the past hour or two, that he'll be far less diplomatic when he takes to the stage on Saturday. I'm getting the feeling that people are really frustrated about a lack of action in that area, and that Galarrwuy Yunupingu really could have some stern words to say for the federal government come Saturday. I think the Northern Territory government might also cop a bit of a whack, particularly on this issue of how and where it spends its money. There was a report handed down here in the Northern Territory a couple of months ago that really highlighted and proved what a lot of people had been saying for a long time here, that a lot of that money that comes to the Northern Territory and the Northern Territory government, particularly through the GST, ends up getting spent in urban areas like Darwin and Alice Springs, and little of it, or certainly not as much as it should, flows through to some of the more remote parts of the Northern Territory. So it's going to be fascinating to watch those speeches, particularly on Saturday, and to hear what some of those key leaders have to say.